Well, hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. How is everybody doing out there in the world? I hope that your day, your evening, or whenever you are listening to this show is finding you just doing swell. I want to take this time and thank everyone for joining this show, thanking everyone who has supported this show from the beginning, whatever program here on the KB Radio Network. I thank you all. It's really been a joy to talk to you all. I mean, I thought at one point I had reached my peak, and then this show, this network, is continuing to grow, and I am so grateful for all of you who continue to come in week out, day in, day out to support this show and listen to this idiot discuss movies and topics and whatever else I'm talking about on the day. And man, I really do appreciate it. Today we're talking about kind of a heavy thing. This is kind of heavy today. We're going to talk about Alec Baldwin, and Alec Baldwin, who we all know is an accomplished actor, one of my favorite actors. I really do like Alec Baldwin. My wife don't. But to be fair, I don't think my wife like any of the Baldwin brothers, but I like them. I like them all for their own individual way. But Alec Baldwin is like the juggernaut of the Baldwins, and going back from the Hunt to Red October, or the Hunt for Red October, and Beetlejuice, and so on and so, The Shadow, and all these other films, and then now his stint on 30 Rock, where I thought he was hilarious on 30 Rock, and his little guest spots on Saturday Night Live, and he's just that type of actor. I don't care what he's in, he's good in it. If it's a comedy, he's funny. If it's a serious drama, he is a thespian. If he's on Broadway, he's an excellent Broadway actor. He's just a solid actor. And politics aside, I know his politics and his views on politics rub a lot of people the wrong way. He became somewhat of a what you say, a controversial figure in politics and commentary on certain issues. But me personally, I don't have a problem with nothing he says. That's his personal opinions on things. Some of the things I agree with. And so I'm not a hater of Alec Baldwin. But as of recently, he popped back in the news. Last year, or it could have been a couple of years ago, when this incident took place, when he was on a set of a film that he was making, and due to unfortunate events, somebody ended up dead by his hand. And it's sad to hear stuff like that. A movie set, when you think about movies, in general, you're like, it's fake. Everything about a film is fake. The acting, the sets, the props, everything about it is fake. It's generated. And when you hear about incidents where people really do get hurt or really do die on a set of a film, it really kind of makes you look at things differently. Like, man, that's a dangerous job in a way, and it is. You think about all these stunt performers, and the death-defying stunts that they do for a film. Just for a scene that's only going to be on screen for what, but maybe about 10, 15 seconds, it can cost their life. They put a lot of work into diving off of a building, or driving a stunt car, and driving it off of a bridge or something like that. That is dangerous, man. A lot of stunt performers do get hurt. A lot of stunt performers do die on the sets of films, for the sake of your entertainment. And that's why I have a lot of respect for movies. That's why I love movies so much, because whether the movie is good or bad, or just plain horrible. There's a lot of love that goes into those films. There's a lot of hard work that goes into films, and you have to respect it. You know, even though the movie might be bad, you still have to respect it. And there are a lot of bad movies, but at the end of the day, you have to respect it. You know, because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into a film. Um, but in this case, the name of this film was Rust, and it was a low budget western in which Alec Baldwin was the star, and he was handed a supposedly a prop gun with fake bullets or blanks, and he fired it, and it was a real bullet in it, which went through the cinematographer, killing her, and I think got lodged in the bullet got lodged in the shoulder of the film's director. You know, it went through her into the director, and you know that I mean that is heartbreaking. That is devastating, especially for an actor or for anybody. You know, who's just a part of a project like this, and you're not expecting it. You have confidence that excuse me, that everybody is doing their job on set. You know that the film's armor, who handles the weaponry, uh, is supposed to secure the weapon. It's supposed to go through a lot of hands before it gets to the actor's hands. You know, to make sure that it's safe, that it's checked, that uh, nothing is awry. Yeah, and in this case, it didn't happen. And I forgot to mention, uh, since we're talking about the unforeseen circumstances that happened on the set of Rust that led to the cinematographer unfortunately losing her life. Uh, we're going to discuss review a film that had similar circumstances, probably the most famous for that reason. And it's still to this day, and I think it's been about what, almost 30 years since this took place, and it still hurts to this day. And it is the 1994 film The Crow, which starred the late great Brandon Lee, and I give him great, even though that was his first big film. Uh, he he would have been great. He would have been great, and we lost him on the set of that film due to a similar circumstance, and a lot of madness ensued after that uh, took place on that set. But Alec Baldwin, um, and the reason we're talking about Alec Baldwin in this particular case, and this took place well over a year ago, but the reason we're talking about it today, a couple of days ago, charges were formally brought up on Alec Baldwin for that situation. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter in the killing of the cinematographer. Um, this is it's weird because it took so long for it to happen, and B, I, I don't see why he's getting charged. Now I don't know all the nooks and crannies of this case. I don't know everything that's surrounding all the factors that surround this case. So maybe I missed something, you know. But this is really strange, especially coming from the film industry, that a star of a film is being charged with a crime that I don't think, well, you know, due to the charges that was brought up on him, involuntary manslaughter. Obviously, this wasn't done on purpose. This wasn't done maliciously. It was just the pure definition of accident. You know, this was an accident, but people are charged with involuntary manslaughter in car wrecks. You know, if somebody gets in a car wreck and somebody dies, that driver, 9 times out of 10, or that's too much, but sometimes are charged with involuntary manslaughter because they caused the death of another human being. Whether it was their fault or, well, not their fault, well, whether it was malicious or not, you know, it could have been prevented. And in this case, yeah, it could have been prevented, but who does the blame lie on? We're gonna go through the story, this press release that surrounding these charges that was brought up, and I guess we can come up with our own determination of what exactly took place on that day on that set of the film Rust. Uh, the headline reads: Alec Baldwin will be charged with involuntary manslaughter in Rust killing. A gun that Mr. Baldwin was rehearsing went off, killing the film cinematographer. The armorer responsible for weapons on the set also faces manslaughter charges. Okay. Um, for more than a year, the actor Alec Baldwin has tried to defend himself against the suggestion that he bore the responsibility for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of Rust, a low budget Western he was filming on the outskirts of Santa Fe, New Mexico. He told detectives he had been assured the gun he was rehearsing with that day did not contain live ammunition. But on Thursday, January the 19th, prosecutors said they would charge him with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter in the killing of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, who was 42 years old, saying they believed that he had a duty to ensure the revolver was safe to handle. In a quote by Andrea Reb, a special prosecutor appointed by the Santa Fe County District Attorney, we're trying to definitely make it clear that everybody's equal under the law, including A-list actors such as Alec Baldwin. And we also want to make sure that the safety of the film industry is addressed and things like this don't happen again. To pause the story for a second, I agree with that. I agree with that statement because, you know, certain people, and not just actors, anybody of privilege, feel that they're above the law. They can get away with whatever. Now, if the law states that Alec Baldwin is culpable in any shape, form, or fashion regarding the death of Helena, he needs to do the time for the crime. I mean, as much as I'm a big fan of his, as much as I like him as a actor and a person or whatever, the law's the law. Nobody is above the law here. But going by what he say and going by what the law say, it's crazy. It's crazy because you don't want to let fandom get in the way of the law. As much as I'm a fan of his, if the law states that he is found wrong here, you have to accept it. And that goes for anybody who is a fan of Alec Baldwin or anybody that this may happen to, God forbid. I mean, the law's the law, you know. But going back to this press release, the film's armorer, Hannah Reed, no relation, who loaded the gun that day and was responsible for weapons on the set, will also be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. The film's first assistant director, David Halls, who handed Mr. Baldwin the gun, agreed to a plea deal on a charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon. The criminal charges Alec Baldwin faces come at a surprise to many in the film industry and were strongly disputed by his legal team. A lawyer for Alec Baldwin, Louis Nichols, said the prosecutor's decision distorts Helena Hudgens' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set, Mr. Nichols said in a statement on this past Thursday, the 19th. He being Alec Baldwin, relied on the professionals with whom he worked, who assured him the gun did not have a live round. He will fight these charges and will win. Um, the SAG, or the Screen Actors Guild, which is the actors union, which of course Alec Baldwin is a part of, along with everybody else in Hollywood. The union representing the film, television, and radio workers said in a statement that the death of Miss Hudgens, uh, I keep saying Hudgens, it's Hitchens. I apologize for that. Miss Hitchens' death was a preventable tragedy, but that it was not the fault, not a failure of duty or a criminal act in the part of any performer. Continuing the quote from the SAG union, the prosecutor's contention that an actor has a duty to ensure the factual and mechanical operation of a firearm on a production set is wrong and uninformed. An actor's job is not to be a firearms or weapons expert. Alec Baldwin, who is 64 years old, has been a household name for decades in Hollywood. Uh, he's been a TV star, as I mentioned before. He was on 30 Rock. He also parodied former President Donald Trump on SNL. He's been a co-host of the Oscars. He's been uh, a voice in radio, having his own radio show as well. Uh, and as I was saying before, when we're starting off this show talking about Alec Baldwin, he is not universally loved. He has had some run-ins with a lot of individuals throughout his career. He has been in a long drawn kind of a beef with the paparazzi or with TMZ and stuff like that. A couple of years ago, a few years ago, he was arrested for riding his bike in the wrong way on Fifth Avenue. In 2018, he was arrested over a parking space dispute, and he has been in numerous feuds on social media. But he has never faced a crisis like this one he is facing right now. Ever since the shooting, Alec Baldwin has sought to strike a kind of a balance, publicly maintaining his innocence in an effort to preserve his reputation and career while trying to stay out of legal jeopardy. He appeared on many national television shows where he said he had been told that the gun did not have any live rounds in it, and added that he was only following directions when he pointed it at the cinematographer. Um, in a quote from Alec Baldwin on one of these shows, he said that someone was responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it wasn't me. Now, after the news spread of the charges being brought up against Alec Baldwin, about 2,000 reporters and photographers camped out on the sidewalk of his Manhattan apartment, according to his neighbors. If a jury finds Alec Baldwin and Hannah Reid, once again, no relation, guilty, it would choose between the two manslaughter charges. The most serious one includes a firearm enhancement and a mandatory 5-year sentence. The other charge carries a sentence up to 18 months in prison. The criminal charges against Alec Baldwin are sure to reopen questions about the safety on film sets and who bears responsibility. The district attorney for Santa Fe County said in an interview that Mr. Baldwin has a duty to ensure the gun and the ammunition are properly checked, and that he should have uh, never pointed at anyone at any time. You should not point a gun at anybody that you're not willing to shoot, she says. That goes to the basic safety standards. Now, Hannah Reid, the armorer who is responsible for the weapons on set and loaded the gun that day, told investigators she had checked the gun and all six cartridges She loaded, but she also remarked, I wish I would have checked it more. One of her attorneys, Jason Bowles, said his client was not responsible for involuntary manslaughter, calling the investigation into the case flawed. The shooting occurred on October the 21st, 2021, which also wounded the film's director, Joel Souza, took place on a small set meant to look like a church. The film's first assistant director, Mr. Hall, who is 63, took the revolver from a gray two-tiered tray outside the church by Miss Reed, who is 25 years old, by the way, and handed it to Alec Baldwin, calling out "cold gun" to indicate it did not contain live rounds, according to the court papers. A lawyer for Mr. Hall said in a statement that the plea deal allows him to put this matter behind him and allow the focus of this tragedy to be on the shooting victims, their family, and changing the industry so this type of accident will never happen again. The prosecutors said they had determined it was part of the film industry's standards for actors to ensure that the gun they use on set were safe for them to handle, saying they had interviewed several actors who spoke to the importance of this protocol. Alec Baldwin had pushed back on the idea in the past, saying that in his experience on film sets, it was not the practice of actors to check their own guns. Um, a special prosecutor who is also a member of the New Mexico legislature, said that Hannah Reed was also responsible for ensuring that the guns on the set did not contain live rounds, saying in an interview that she should have taken each round out of the gun, shaking them in front of the actor, a practice that helps confirm the rounds are dummies. Um, in the aftermath of the shooting, the authorities found live additional rounds, five live additional rounds to be exact, on the set, including on top of the cart where props were kept and on a belt that Alec Baldwin was wearing as a costume piece. The investigation by the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office did not answer a key question, how live ammunition ended up on a film set. And it's still unclear right now. The special prosecutor said in a quote, "We may never answer that question," she said. The tragedy has resulted in several lawsuits, including the crew members who had accused the production of not properly following safety protocols. During interviews with the sheriff's office, some crew members described a lack of constant meetings devoted to on-set safety. The night before the shooting, most of the camera crew had quit over complaints about overnight lounging and other concerns. In an email to another person on set informing them he was leaving, Lane Looper, the head of the camera department, wrote that the filming of gunfight scenes were played very fast and loose, citing 2 accidental weapons discharges. A lawyer for Miss Reed, who trained on film sets with her father, a veteran Hollywood armorer named Thayer Reed, once again no relation, had previously said she filled 2 roles on the Rush set, an armorer and prop assistant, which made it difficult for her to focus fully on her job as an armorer. Alec Baldwin had maintained that he was not responsible for the shooting, saying that Miss Hitchens had been directing him where to point the gun, and that he did not pull the trigger before the gun discharged. He told investigators he had pulled the hammer back and let go of the action that may had set it off. I know 1000% I'm not responsible for what happened to her, says Alec Baldwin, as he told an investigator. The prosecutors said the people they intend to charge this month will not be arrested, but will be expected to appear in a virtual court appearance. A judge in New Mexico will then oversee a preliminary hearing on the charges and determine whether there is probable cause to move forward. Hannah Reed has also accused Seth Kinney, the primary supplier of guns and ammunition for the film, of being responsible for the shooting, alleging in a lawsuit against him and his company that the supply he sent to the set had mixed live ammunition with the dummy rounds. Mr. Kennedy has said he checked all of the rounds he provided to the production to ensure they were not live, saying in a statement that handling the guns and ammunition on a set was Hannah Reed's responsibility. Last year, Matthew Higgins, the widower of Helena Higgins, agreed to settle his wrongful death lawsuit against the Rux production. Under the agreement, Mr. Higgins would become an executive producer on Rust, which had been set to resume filming this very month. Um, it was not immediately clear how the planned charges would affect those plans. A lawyer for Mr. Higgins said in a statement that he agreed with the decision to bring the criminal charges up against Alec Baldwin and Hannah Reed. It is a comfort to the family that in New Mexico, no one is above the law, says Mr. Higgins' attorney. We support the charges. We will fully cooperate with any prosecution and hope the justice system works to protect the public and hold accountability to those who break the law. That is the article statement of what has transpired thus far revolving this incident that took place on a set of Russ, starring Alec Baldwin. The film Russ, like I said, you would think that would have put the kibosh on this movie, that there was going to be no more talk of Russ. But we've seen in the past, and especially in the film that we're going to review today, that doesn't stop. I hope I ain't insensitive when I say this, but one monkey don't stop no show. Or as they say in show business, the show must go on. They were about to continue to shoot this film to get it finished in the can for us to see after somebody had passed away on the set. And look, I can understand in some cases where, if somebody suddenly dies, that's on a production, I can see them stopping production and probably resuming production after the fact, after they had a grieving period and whatnot. In the case where somebody is essentially murdered, or is that harsh? Is murder too harsh? Or just killed on the set? I don't know, man. Especially by the lead actor in a western, which deals with shootouts and gunfights and all this here. How are you going to continue this film? I don't understand that, but they were going to attempt it, and the widow of the cinematographer, part of the deal is he was going to be an executive producer on the film. It's kind of weird, but it's that's for monetary reasons. That way he can get a portion of the profit of the film, which I don't think was going to make a big profit, rather this tragedy took place or not. But stranger things have happened. But with the charges brought up, this put a halt to that again. So they're back in on hiatus, I guess you could say, with production of this film. But here's what this film was about, or is about, or whatever. Russ is an upcoming American Western film written and directed by Joel Schroze. I think that's it, how you pronounce his name. And it stars Alec Baldwin, who also produces and co-wrote the story for this film. This is a passion project for Alec Baldwin. This is something that he's been trying to get made for a long time, and uh, I guess that's why they kind of push ahead and get this film made. But the premise of it is in 1880s Kansas, aging outlaw Harlan Russ, portrayed by Alec Baldwin, comes out of hiding to rescue his 13-year-old grandson Lucas, who had been sentenced to hang for murder after an accidental shooting. Boy, talk about life imitating art, huh? Uh, Now fugitives, the pair must outrun both Russ nemesis, uh, U.S. Marshal Wood Helm, who is portrayed in this film by Jensen Ackles, who we all probably know from Supernatural. Uh, he was on the last season of The Boys. I like Jensen. I love him. you know, and the vicious bounty hunter Preacher Lane, who is portrayed by Travis uh, Fummel, who I think was on Vikings, that show Vikings. I think that's where he was. I've seen him in a couple of things, and he was in that god awful. What was that Warcraft movie? He was in that too. But yeah, yeah. This is it's heartbreaking, man. It's a heartbreaking story. I hate that it had to happen. It is really going to change the way films, hopefully, change the way we see films going forward. Yeah, especially involving firearms and weapons. You probably won't see too many shootouts in movies like we used to in the past. Uh, they're probably going to change that now, especially with this lawsuit and with the charges being brought up against Alec Baldwin. That's going to really change some things because had not these charges been brought up, I don't think Hollywood would change anything. As you can see, they were going right back into production, and now with these charges brought up, now it done got real. Ish got real quick. So now they I think they're gonna change the way they do these firearm shootout scenes. So yeah, sad. But speaking of sad, let's get into our review. Our film. Uh this is so sad, man. And like I said, it's been close to 30. It's been 29 years exact. Uh since this film came out, and it is still to this day heartbreaking. Whenever you watch this movie and you have this dark cloud hanging over it, no matter how good or bad the film is in your view, you can't help but watch this movie and look at Brandon Lee and think about what could have been, or think about what happened on the set, you know, and how they finished this film after that, because they still had a good portion of movie left to film in the 1994 film The Crow, and they managed to find a way to finish the production of this film. Crow was a superhero film, and in 1994, superhero films were the joke. We didn't have the MCU's, we didn't have DC films, we didn't have all these Marvel shows on Disney Plus of good quality. Should I say? In 1994, around that era, you got the Batman Forevers and the Batman and Robins and uh uh what was that Captain America film that went straight to video where he was on a motorcycle fighting Red Skull. Yeah, I remember that old 90s Captain America film. It could have came out in the 80s. I don't even remember. But I remember watching it when I was younger. Horrible movie. It's a horrible superhero movie, and nothing uh, aside from what you saw on Saturday morning cartoons or after school, the Batman animated series and stuff like that. I think that came a little later, but you know, the animated stuff was great as far as comic book superhero movies or superhero material. On the big screen, we didn't get good quality stuff. This, on the other hand, was probably the best of that era as far as superhero films. And this was based on a comic book, or is based on a comic book uh, that I didn't read. I didn't know anything about around that time, but I found the story interesting. And they cast Brandon Lee. Now, for those of you who don't know who Brandon Lee was, he is the son of the great, the dragon himself, Bruce Lee. And this was supposed to be the film that sent Brandon Lee into the atmosphere. I think it was going there. But prior to this, Brandon Lee had done like smaller films. I think it was Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren, uh, Rapid Fire, which was pretty good. That was his breakout. That's when I really started paying attention. I was like, wait, that's Bruce Lee, son. You know, it was a good little movie. For that era, for the '90s. A typical '90s action film. I think Powers Booth was in that movie. And it was an announcement. Okay, Brandon Lee is here, but this was supposed to be the star-making role, The Crow, and it was a different type of a superhero. This wasn't a superhero, with the bright colors and the capes and flying around saving all mankind for the American way. No, this was a different type of film, and in this, Brandon Lee plays Eric Draven, a murdered musician who is resurrected to avenge his death as well as his fiance's. This film is directed by Alex Poyas, who directed Dark City, I Robot, Knowing, and most famously, I think the last film he directed was Gods of Egypt, which wasn't well received. I remember seeing, I think I went to an early screening of Gods of Egypt, and I came out just like completely disappointed and mad because I thought it was going to be something something more, I guess you could say, and it wasn't. It wasn't what I expected. I did not like that movie, and the backlash behind the whitewash of that film. It takes place in Egypt, but everybody's white, which was rather ridiculous. But it did have one black character I know for certain, and it was the late great Chadwick Boseman. He played one of the gods of Egypt, and he was the only black person in that film. And besides him, I don't think any other race was represented. But yeah, he did. This is his first film, I believe. At least the first film I know of him direct. I like Dark City. I liked I Robot. I even like Knowing, which starred Nicolas Cage. But this film here, it really stands out, and I would go as far to say it is a modern classic, maybe even a masterpiece in some sick sadistic world that we live in. Um, Along with Brandon Lee, the film also stars Eddie Hudson and Michael Wincock, who, uh, man, you want to talk about a fan? I've been a fan of Michael Wincock for, I mean, everything he's in. I just love his voice. Recently, he popped up, and I haven't seen him in a while, but just randomly, recently he popped up in Jordan Peele's new film, Nope, as the cinematographer, as that director who wants to film the alien. Uh, and he was great in that. I just love Michael Wincott, and in this film, he plays the villain, and what a villain! He was menacing as I don't know what. I mean, he was the villain in a little underrated Eddie Murphy film called Metro. If anybody's seen Metro, it's not one of Eddie Murphy's best movies. It's like a random '90s action movie that starred just so happened to star Eddie Murphy, but it was good. I say '90s, it probably been early 2000s. I can't remember when Metro came out, but he was the villain in that film, and he was a real good villain in that. Actually, that was the last time I seen him in anything until I saw him in Nope. I'm pretty sure he was in other things, but I never witnessed anything else that he was in. But yeah, in this is set on Devil's Night, which is October the 30th, the day before Halloween. And of course, one of the biggest things in this film is, or at least what is known for, other than the tragic death of Brandon Lee. Around that time, this film was known for its soundtrack. And this was around the grunge period, you know, with the Nevadas and the Smashing Pumpkins and all that good stuff. And the soundtrack was heavy with that. And it was, and I wasn't even into it that much. I had a friend that was, and he got me onto the soundtrack, you know. And I really enjoyed it because I listened to all genres of music. At least I started to around that time. And I got into this soundtrack to the point when I purchased it. I think I went to, it was Blockbuster Music at the time, you know, and bought the CD. I know a lot of people, a lot of young folks right now are lost. A CD, what's that? But yeah, I had the soundtrack, but it just added a different um layer to this film. It really did. It elevated it, and along with its dark tone and subject matter, it also I felt it was a bold film because not too many films kept a dark tone like this film did. And man, the character of the Crow was like a superhero I wanted to be. Aside from dying and being resurrected, I wanted to be the Crow. It was just so cool the way Brandon Lee played this character, and um, I don't know. It's the scene. My favorite scene in this film is the scene when he goes, I think, to go get is it Honey Boy? Is the name or Fun Boy? I can't remember which was the name of the character that he was coming after because all the people that killed him, he hunt them down one by one and get revenge. And he went to this nightclub, but they had the office up top. That's where Michael Wincock's character of Top Dollar, that was his little office up there, and he had a round table with all these criminals, and he just walked in, and it, you know, the Crow didn't have weapons or nothing like that, so all these other criminals had their guns and all this here, and it was, he just walked in like it was nothing. You remember that scene in The Dark Knight when the the Crow, when the Joker walked in, the first scene we are introduced to the Joker. Well, not that wasn't the first scene. Well, the first scene that we saw the Joker, and he does this magic trick with the pencil and all this here. But he just walked in with this swagger, like they're not gonna kill me, even though everybody in there could kill me. Same thing here. The Crow just walked in with this swagger, like I don't care about all of y'all. I just want him. And he took all of them out. You know, he took them all out in the action in that scene, the choreography in that scene. It was so great. It was so exciting. It just, I don't know. It was a shot of adrenaline that I didn't think I was gonna get at that point, but I got it. Oh man, it was. I loved it. I loved it. We all know Brandon Lee can handle it. He's a martial well, he was a martial artist. Of course. I mean, his father was Bruce Lee. I mean, he knew a little bit about a little bit. Also, just randomly out the blue, um, Ernie Hudson being cast in this film as a police officer. Um, wouldn't expect to see Ernie Hudson in this type of movie, but he was. He was kind of the grounding factor of the film. You know, I loved his character, and I love Ernie. Been loving Ernie Hudson since Ghostbusters. You know, and everything else he pops up in, he's just money. And he was like the crazy enough to say he was the biggest name in this cast in 1994. He was the guy. He was like, oh man, that's Winston from Ghostbusters, you know, and but he held it down. He was just that grounding factor of the film. I love the chemistry between him and Brandon Lee. They had a real nice chemistry, kind of a buddy cop type chemistry, and it worked for this movie. Overall, the entire film just works. And the scene that Brandon Lee passed away in, the scene where he got shot, you could see it. You remember well, you don't remember, but I remember in high school. I was in high school when this came out, and everybody's seeing it. We'd be in class talking about it, and you know, people just make up. You know what kids do, teenagers do. They just make up rumors and theories and pass it along like it's true. And everybody says that the scene that he gets shot, and they kept it in the movie. It's the scene when he confronts Fun Boy, because that actor, I think his name is Michael Massey. He's the one who actually uh, had the gun that killed Brandon Lee, and in that scene, you can see where he kind of gets shot and he got falls back, and everybody assumes that was the scene. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, because later on we find out, like if you watch documentaries on this film, documentaries surrounding the death of Brandon Lee, they do say it was that scene. That was the scene he was killed in. But did they keep that actual quote unquote shot in the movie where he was actually shot? I I don't know, man. I don't want to believe that. I pray they're not that insensitive, but it was very convincing. Now you may ask yourself, how did they finish this film? How did they finish production on this film without the star? Your star died midway through the film, and so how did you finish this movie? Well, how they did it was, he had shot a lot of his stuff, and I hate saying shot. I know that's the terminology for it, but not for this particular show. He had filmed a lot of his stuff already, so that didn't really affect it. But like for close-ups and shot scenes where he needed to walk through a hallway or something like that, they used the stand-in. So they'll use the stand-in to do these scenes. And what they would do was, which they do commonly now in film, they mapped or superimposed Brandon Lee's face over the stand-in's face. Now the stand-in already looked similar to Brandon Lee. All films, all actors in whatever film they're in, they have stand-ins. Somebody that looks similar to him. Like even the stunt performers. So you ever see those memes or those pictures show up where an actor is standing next to their stunt double or their stand-in, and they look very similar, almost look like twins in some instances? Well, in this case, they had a stand-in who looked fairly similar to Brandon Lee, and they just fixed it in post. you know, uh, I know that the beginning, because 99% of films are not filmed in order. They don't go chronologically. Like, okay, the first day of shooting is scene one. The last last day of shooting is the final scene. No, they bounce around. Sometimes you would get a film schedule where they film the last scene first, or they'll film the middle first, or whatever the case, or they'll film all the action scenes first, and then they'll go into the dramatic stuff later, or vice versa. So just like every other film, this film was not shot in order. But what was missing after his death, a big part of the film, was the opening. If you've seen The Crow, which I'm pretty sure, if you haven't seen The Crow, it's almost 30 years old. I'm sorry, I'm about to spoil some stuff. Um, the beginning of the film, it just comes on. He's being resurrected at the beginning of the film. That wasn't the initial plan. The initial plan was you were supposed to see what took place, what happened a year prior, because he's resurrected on the year anniversary of him and his fiance's death. So we were supposed to see what happened that night. You know, those guys coming in and murdering the two of them, but that wasn't filmed because you didn't have Brandon Lee. So that's why that was 86th. And that's one of the things that's kind of hindering the film a little bit, because you don't have that connection, especially to the fiance's character. You don't have that connection there because we didn't get it. On no fault to them. It just circumstances, you know, they couldn't film the scenes with her. So you can have that connection, so you can feel that weight that he lost, you know. But they did the best they could, and you did feel it a little bit, but it wasn't that heavy weight. Like, okay, the stakes are high, you know. You don't get that feeling from the film, and that's my biggest knock for it. And I hate knocking it for it because I understand why we didn't get it, you know. I truly do. But with that aside, I consider The Crow a cult, can't get it out, a cult classic, a modern classic, and a very exceptional film. Uh, The Crow from 1994 gets a letter grade of a B plus. I really love The Crow, uh, so much so that for years I would go as far to say maybe a decade or so, they've been trying to reboot The Crow like like crazy. So many actors have been attached, so many directors have been attached, and they just can't get it. Prior to that, The Crow did spawn some sequels, even a television show. I remember maybe it was 2 years later. I think it was 96, 97, somewhere up in there. We got The Crow, the City of Angels, which was horrible. Uh, it wasn't Eric Draven. It was a different character, a different story, a different. But he was the Crow. I think Vincent Pierre, yeah, Vincent Perez, I believe his name. Yeah, he was the Crow. It was bad. It was so bad, but it got even worse after that. You had uh the Crow Salvation, which came out a couple of years after that. That was horrible. That was the one, I think Kirsten Dunst was in that movie. Yeah, it was bad. I can't remember the actor who played the Crow, but it went straight to video. I think that one did. It was bad. You had the Crow Wicked Prayer, which starred Eric Furlong and David Boreanaz from Angel fame. You know, Eric Furlong from Terminator 2, the kid, John Connor, he was the Crow. Horrible, horrible movie. I think Dennis Hopper was in that movie. Danny Trejo was in that movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, that movie was horrible. All the sequels were horrible. They had a TV show, The Crow Stairway to Heaven, and that came out like, I want to say 99, 2000, somewhere up in there, where Mark Dacascos played Eric Draven. This was the only continuation of Eric Draven from there, and he was a crime fighter or something. I forgot. He played the. It was bad. It was so bad, and I like Mark Dacascos, but this was so bad. All of them were bad. But the sequel, they tried a sequel, I think, around that time when the TV show came out. Rob Zombie was going to direct it, believe it or not. And thank God, thank God that didn't happen, because Rob Zombie is not a good director. I'm sorry, he is not a good director in the least bit. Nah, bro. I'm so happy that didn't come to fruition. But we are getting this sequel. It's been filmed. I think they finished filming it last year, maybe. And Bill Skarsgård is playing Eric Draven. Bill Skarsgård, if you don't know who he is, we just saw him recently last year in Barbarian. And most commonly, we know him as Pennywise, the dancing clown from the It films from a couple of years ago. Yes, he's taken over the role as Eric Draven. And that film is directed by Rupert Sanders, who did what was it, Snow White and the Huntsman. He did uh Ghost in the Shell, the live action remake, or the live action version rather, of the popular MAGA, which starred Scarlett Johansson, which eh, I'll just say that. But that's the film that we're finally getting. Now, over the years, as I said, they've tried this so many times. At one point, Stephen Norrington was going to direct. He was going to write and direct. He did the first Blade film, and that would have been a perfect mix, but that fell through. Alex Portis, who did the original, he was in discussions to take it over, but it didn't work out. Who else? I can't remember right off the top of my head, but so many, so many, and my God, the actors, the actors who were attached at one point or another. I mean, literally signed on. They were signed on to make the film. It wasn't oh, they were in discussions. No, they have signed on. They were ready to shoot, and it never came. Luke Evans was signed on to play Eric Draven at one point. They even started scouting locations here in New Orleans, and I was excited about that. Didn't happen. didn't come to fruition. Who else? Bradley Cooper at one time was attached to star. I mean, they got deep into pre-production there. It fell apart. Jason Momoa, he even took a picture of himself as Eric Draven and posted it on his Instagram. That fell apart. And it just bounced around. The rights bounced around. They couldn't get it together, and they finally did. But right now, the film that's in the can, they're trying to find a studio that's actually going to release the film. But it is finished. But the original Crow will live in infamy for losing probably one of the most anticipated up-and-coming stars in Hollywood, a legacy actor, and it's sad because the film was so good and you saw so much potential of what could have been, but it's devastating. But nonetheless, we still have something to remember him by, and that is the 1994 film, The Crow. Yeah, man, it's Hollywood is it's not all sunshine and rainbows, people. I mean, people do lose their lives on sets of films, man, and they do need to change that up. They do need to find a system to kind of keep it safe, In films like this, when you're handling weapons, it's a weapon. It's a gun. It's a gun. At the end of the day, it's a real gun. And you may ask yourself why they have live rounds at all. Well, it's for the effect factor. Sometimes you need to shoot a real gun to shoot into a piece of wood or something, into a wall or something for that effect uh, that'll catch on camera, things of that nature. That's why they'll have that there. But when dealing with gunfights, with other actors, no, it's not supposed to be. And I hope they do find a better way, a better system to do it. I don't want to lose the gunfights out of films. That's an exciting part of film. But if we have to lose it in order to save people's lives, uh, that's fine too. That it is more important than my mere entertainment. But yeah, everybody. Alec Baldwin. Look, man, I don't know what's gonna happen at the end of all this. Uh, Hopefully, prayerfully, you know, justice will be served one way or the other. Maybe justice being maybe he's innocent of all charges, or justice that he should have been more careful, or he should have checked it. Me personally, if I'm an actor on set, I'm gonna take people at their word. I'm gonna take those who are paid to do that job at their word, but I'm gonna check it myself too. I'm gonna be sure, especially if I gotta point it at somebody or towards somebody. Uh, but that's just me. Anyways, everybody, how do you feel about this situation? What you think? What you think is right? Do you think he being Alec Baldwin is vindicated of any wrongdoing, or do you feel that he needs to pay the cost for what he did or didn't do? Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing the show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on YouTube. I'm also on YouTube as well. I see we getting some views on YouTube as well. So check us out there, and you can share the show. Everybody, thank you for joining me today. It has been a pleasure, even though this is not a pleasant subject to talk about, but it does need to be discussed. Thank you once again. And as always, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.